The scent of jasmine tea and old money hung heavy in the air of the exclusive tea house. I sat across from Eleanor Vance, the matriarch of the Vance dynasty, a woman whose smile was as cold and polished as the diamonds on her fingers. She was the reason I was currently trying not to scald my tongue on overpriced oolong. "Miss Celine Croft," she began, her voice a silken blade. "Here's 10 million. Leave my son alone." She slid a black bank card across the polished rosewood table with a manicured nail. I almost choked on my tea, a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in my throat. 10 million. No wonder she was the queen of San Francisco's elite. Her opening gambit was truly a testament to her world. I took a deliberate sip from my porcelain cup, the liquid searing a path down my throat. I forced myself to swallow, my eyes watering slightly. Eleanor's lips pursed in a perfect mask of disdain. She handed me a linen napkin without a word. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance," I said, dabbing my mouth, buying a precious second to compose myself. The number danced in my head, but a better one followed it, borrowed from countless late-night drama binges. I set the cup down with a soft click. "But, is your son only worth 10 million? I've seen television shows where they start at 20. The facade cracked. Her face did a spectacular impression of someone who had just swallowed a live bee. What did you say?" I flashed her my most professional, placating smile, the one I used to pacify difficult clients at the marketing firm I just quit. "Julian," I said, invoking her son's name like a sacred relic, "is practically the crown prince of the Bay Area's golden circle. The Vance empire is worth what, tens of billions. Offering 10 million seems a little modest, don't you think?" Her complexion cycled through shades of red and purple, a human traffic light of suppressed fury. "Celine Croft," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "Don't you dare overplay your hand. Auntie, please don't upset yourself." I quickly poured her a fresh cup of tea, the picture of contrite concern. "How about this? 15 million. And I guarantee I'll disappear so thoroughly, not even the sea could find me." Mrs. Vance's hands, adorned with a flawless emerald-cut diamond, trembled with a rage I knew she hadn't felt in years. With a sharp, furious movement, she pulled a checkbook from her Birkin bag, scribbled a series of numbers with a furious scratch of her pen and slammed it onto the table. The sound echoed in the hushed room. 12 million. Not a cent more. Deal. The word was out of my mouth before the echo of her slam had faded. With a speed that would make a magician blush, I plucked both the bank card and the check from the table and slipped them into my own decidedly non-designer tote bag. "And you have my word. I'll be out of the city by nightfall. You will never see me in your son's orbit again." I gave her a reassuring nod. Eleanor Vance massaged her temples, looking as if she profoundly regretted the life choices that had led to Julian's existence. "You didn't even ask about him," she muttered almost to herself. Then louder, "He has a fiancée, you know." My eyes widened in mock surprise. "He does? Well, then you should be paying me extra for my discretion. This constitutes a failure to disclose material information. By rights, there ought to be a surcharge." "Get out," she finally snapped, her composure shattering like the fine china she probably owned sets of. I didn't need to be told twice. I made a swift, graceful exit, my heart hammering a victorious tattoo against my ribs. The first thing I did after leaving the serene oppression of the tea house was find the nearest bank. A girl can't be too careful. What if it was a fraudulent check? The teller's professionally neutral expression flickered for a nanosecond as she processed the transaction. The funds were real. A cool $12 million, now nestled snugly in my previously anemic savings account. I immediately pulled out my phone and texted my landlord. "Janet, I've come into some unexpected funds. Keep the deposit as a bonus. I'm moving out today." Back in the modest apartment I shared with my roommate, Chloe, I hummed a jaunty tune as I started pulling clothes from my closet and tossing them into a suitcase. Truth be told, there wasn't much I wanted to take. The truly valuable things, the jewelry, the handbags, the ridiculously expensive winter coat, were all gifts from Julian. I didn't plan on taking a single one. If you're going to cut ties, you cut them clean. "You're in a good mood. Win the lottery?" Chloe asked, poking her head into my room, a bag of chips in her hand. "Better than the lottery," I chirped, folding a sweater with more enthusiasm than skill. "Eleanor Vance just paid me $12 million to disappear from Julian's life." Chloe's chips hit the floor with a soft scatter. How much? 12 million. It was only 10 at first, but I negotiated. Pretty good, right? Celine Croft, Chloe breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and awe. You are the most shameless woman I have ever met. I am genuinely in awe of you. Too kind, I said, clasping my hands together in a gesture of mock humility. Once I'm settled, I'll treat you to a meal. You pick the place, price is no object. Just as I was zipping up my suitcase, the doorbell rang. I assumed it was a food delivery Chloe had ordered. I swung the door open, a casual smile on my face, and froze. It was Julian. He stood there, silhouetted in the hallway light, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, a bouquet of deep red roses in his hand. He had that slightly ruffled end-of-day look that made him even more devastatingly handsome. Left work early to see you, he said, a slow, familiar smile spreading across his face. Surprised. I was frozen in the doorway, my mind racing into overdrive. Behind me, my half-packed suitcase was splayed open on the bed like a guilty secret. My laptop screen, which I'd forgotten to close, was still displaying a web page for luxury villa rentals in Lake Tahoe. Aren't you going to let me in? Julian raised an eyebrow, his gaze already drifting past me into the room. Oh. Yes, of course, come in, I stammered, stepping aside to let him pass, my body moving on autopilot. Julian's eyes went straight to the suitcase. His smile faltered. Going somewhere? Business trip, I blurted out, my voice an octave too high. Last-minute thing. To Seattle. Seattle? He frowned, stepping further into the room. The roses in his hand seemed absurd now, a prop from a play that had just been cancelled. You never mentioned anything about that. Well, it was sudden, I forced a laugh, desperately trying to change the subject. Are those for me? They're beautiful. Julian handed me the flowers and pulled me into his embrace before I could react. I missed you, he murmured, his warm breath brushing against my neck. My entire body went rigid. My ex-boyfriend worth $12 million is kissing my neck. You're tense today, Julian said, releasing me and looking at me with suspicious, perceptive eyes. Is everything okay? Am I? I let out a dry, hollow laugh. Maybe I'm just tired from packing. Julian nodded slowly, not quite convinced, and walked over to my desk. My heart leaped into my throat and seemed to lodge there, pounding wildly. The bank deposit slip was lying right there on the desk, next to a stray pen. I moved to snatch it away, but I was a second too late. His fingers closed around the small piece of paper. His eyes scanned it, and his expression shifted from curious to stormy in an instant. 2 million, he read aloud, his voice dangerously quiet. Who gave this to you? My mind scrambled for a lie, any lie. A year-end bonus. Your company issues year-end bonuses by check? He sneered. And you've only been there for 3 months. I had outstanding performance. Julian's gaze dropped to the signature line. His face went pale. Pie mother. The 2 words were icy final. When did she contact you? This afternoon. There was no point in lying now. The jig was up. Julian looked heartbroken. It was a look I hadn't seen on him before, not even when his favorite football team lost the championship. You're really leaving me? For $2 million. I took a deep breath. The charade was over. It was time to face the music, even if it was a funeral dirge. Don't worry, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You're not that cheap. It's 12 million. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear Chloe breathing softly from behind her cracked door. Your mom is actually quite nice, I continued, filling the void with bravado. She even served me tea. She's just a bit stingy. Started at 10, but I talked her up to 12. Not bad, huh? Julian's expression was that of a man who had been struck by lightning mid-sentence. You just accepted it? Just like that? What was I supposed to do? I asked, looking at him as if it were the most logical thing in the world. Julian, we're talking about $12 million. I thought you loved me, he said, his voice barely a whisper, laced with a pain that almost made me feel guilty. I love money more than I love you, I stated plainly. Honestly, from our first date when you took me to that French place where the tasting menu was $500 a head, I thought, this guy spends like his family owns a gold mine. Julian looked like he was suffocating. So the last 6 months, it was all an act? I shrugged, a gesture that felt both freeing and cruel. Not entirely. You're a great guy. Handsome. Amazing in bed. But Julian, come on. I reached out and patted his shoulder, a consolatory gesture that was utterly inappropriate. Don't be mad. How about this? When my investments pay off, I'll treat you to a meal. In a sudden violent motion, Julian snatched the check from my desk and tore it into a dozen tiny pieces, letting them flutter to the floor like confetti. Will you still leave if the money is gone? I sighed, a genuine sound of pity. I reached into my tote bag, pulled out my phone and brought up the bank app. I turned the screen to face him, showing the clear, undeniable deposit notification. Sweetheart, I said softly. What you tore up was the duplicate. The money is already in my account. The look on his face was priceless. I almost wished I had the presence of mind to take a picture. We're done, I said, my finality a solid wall between us. I reached up and patted his cheek. I wish you and your fiancé all the happiness in the world. By the way, does your fiancé know you're keeping a mistress on the side? Need me to help you keep it a secret? Friends discount, 2 million. The sound of the door slamming as he left was like a period at the end of this chaotic chapter of my life. I stood there for a moment, the silence ringing in my ears. Then I bent down and picked up the torn pieces of paper, whistling as I tossed them into the trash. Chloe crept out of her room. Well, is it over? It's over, I confirmed, zipping my suitcase closed with a definitive whir. I'm leaving tonight. Aren't you even a little bit sad? She asked, her voice full of disbelief. Sad about what? I pulled out my phone again and stared at the string of zeros in my banking app. I'm a multimillionaire now, Chloe. Being sad would be disrespectful to money. The first rule of having stupid money is to not do stupid things with it. The second rule is to enjoy it, but with the precision of a surgeon, not the abandon of a lottery winner. I wasn't about to blow my 12 million on a fleet of gold-plated sports cars. No, I was going to make it work for me, to build a fortress of solitude and security so impregnable that no Vance, no matter how powerful, could ever breach it. My first stop was Lake Tahoe. I rented a stunning modern villa with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the sapphire lake and the snow-dusted Sierra Peaks like a living painting. It was peaceful, it was private, and it was a universe away from the glass and steel cage of San Francisco. For the first week I did nothing but breathe. I woke up to the sound of pine needles rustling, not traffic. I drank my coffee on the deck, wrapped in a blanket, and watched the light change on the water. The constant low-grade hum of anxiety that had been my background music for years simply faded away. But a leopard doesn't change its spots, and a workaholic doesn't suddenly find nirvana in solitude. After the initial decompression, my mind started whirring again. The 12 million was a glorious safety net, but it wasn't a purpose. I needed a project. I needed an empire. Enter Leo. I found him through a specialized, discreet agency. He was a former model, Mr. Asia Pacific, a few years back, who had parlayed his stunning looks and unnerving calm into a career as a personal assistant to the wealthy and eccentric. When he showed up for the interview at the villa, he was impeccably dressed in a simple linen shirt and trousers, his posture so perfect it seemed to defy gravity. He had the kind of sculpted, serene handsomeness that made you think of classical statues, and eyes that missed nothing. Miss Croft, he said, his voice a smooth, low baritone. A pleasure. The pleasure is mine, Leo, I said, gesturing for him to sit. I need an assistant. The job involves travel, discretion, handling my investments, and occasionally pretending to be my boyfriend to piss off my ex. A flicker of amusement crossed his otherwise impassive face. The last item wasn't in the job description, but I'm adaptable. My references will attest to my discretion. He was hired by the end of the hour. His first task was to help me launch Cadence Beverages, a high-end bubble tea chain. The concept was my brainchild, born from a place of petty spite and brilliant marketing. Our signature drink was the Clean Break, a refreshing blend of green tea, lychee, and a hint of chili. Our marketing hook? We used a filtered, distorted audio clip of Julian's drunken, "I miss you" voicemail as the order confirmation sound. It was subtle enough to be deniable, obvious enough to be a delicious inside joke. The hashtag Clean Break challenge went viral on social media, with people posting videos of themselves confidently sipping the drink after a breakup. Business was booming. Months drifted by in a blissful, sun-drenched haze. I was a different person. The version of me that had calculated calorie counts and worried about saying the right thing at Julian's stuffy galas was gone. In her place was a woman with a tan, a steadily growing investment portfolio, and a personal Adonis who brought her coconut water without being asked. "Boss, let me give you a massage," Leo said one afternoon by the infinity pool. He knelt on one knee beside my lounger, his slender fingers beginning to work the tension from my shoulders. Sunshine, the scent of sunscreen, the gentle lap of lake water against the shore. This was the life my 12 million had bought. A little to the left. "Yes, right there," I directed, squinting against the bright blue sky. "Harder. Your technique isn't as good as..." I caught myself just in time. "I mean, it's not quite professional grade yet." Leo immediately adjusted the pressure, his expression unreadable. "My apologies, Miss Croft. I will endeavor to improve." I took a satisfied sip of my iced tea. My phone pinged. A bank alert. "Your account has received a transfer of $300,000. Balance: $12,843,211.57. I smiled. The first major dividend from my investments in a tech startup had just landed. "Leo, book the underwater restaurant at the Edgewood for dinner tonight." "Of course, boss. Shall I also arrange for a stylist?" "Book the most expensive one," I said with a wave of my hand. "And you're coming with me. Wear that Tom Ford suit I bought you last week." Leo's eyes, usually so composed, lit up with a genuine spark. "Thank you, Miss Croft." This was the magic of money. It didn't just buy freedom. It bought compliance, gratitude, and a very attractive arm candy. That evening, draped in a silk gown that cost more than my first car, I boarded a private yacht for a party hosted by a Lake Tahoe real estate magnate, Mr. Thorne. Leo was on my arm, a perfect, silent statue of male perfection. Rumor of my settlement from the Vances had clearly made the rounds among the new money elite, and I was now a minor celebrity, a cautionary tale for mothers and a folk hero for gold diggers everywhere. "Miss Croft." Mr. Thorne boomed, coming forward to greet us, champagne flute in hand. "I've heard so much about you. I heard you made Eleanor Vance eat humble pie." "Magnificent." I gave a modest, regal wave. "Oh, it was nothing really. The auntie was just exceptionally generous." As we exchanged pleasantries, a sudden commotion broke out near the entrance. I turned, and the champagne in my glass nearly sloshed over the rim. Julian stood there. He was wearing a navy blue suit that hugged his broad shoulders perfectly, and on his arm was a vision in white. Isabella Rossi, his fiancée, the daughter of an Italian hotel magnate. The diamond necklace at her throat was so large it probably had its own gravitational pull. I instinctively tried to shrink behind Leo's formidable frame, but it was too late. Julian's gaze, sharp and searching, swept the room and locked onto me. Then it dropped to my hand, which was tucked possessively in the crook of Leo's arm. "Celine Croft." He stalked over, his voice a low thunderclap of disbelief. "What are you doing here?" I forced my face into a mask of casual amusement. "Julian. What a small world. I'm here for the champagne. And you?" I let my eyes drift to Isabella. "And who is this?" "My fiancée Isabella," he said through gritted teeth. His eyes were daggers, shifting between me and Leo. "And who is this?" "My boyfriend Leo," I said, leaning a little closer to him. "A model. Won the Mr. Asia Pacific title a few years back." Leo cooperatively flashed his award-winning smile, the one that made waitresses drop things. The fabric of his suit jacket strained ever so slightly over his chest. Isabella, despite her engagement ring the size of a small planet, couldn't help but steal a few lingering glances at him. I saw it instantly. "Oh my," I purred. "Does Miss Rossi have an appreciation for the athletic form? Leo darling, show her your portfolio from the competition. The one with the oil." Leo obediently pulled out his phone. The album was, as requested, full of tasteful but undeniable photos of him posing in nothing but tiny, sequined briefs. Isabella's eyes widened, her cheeks flushing a delicate pink. Julian's face darkened to the color of a stormy sea. "Nouveau riche," he whispered, the words a venomous dart aimed directly at my ear. "Couldn't wait to use my mother's money to buy yourself a pretty boy?" "Mama's boy," I shot back, my smile never wavering. "At least my date doesn't make a sound when I catch him ogling other men in front of me." We stood there for a moment, a silent battle raging in the space between us. The air crackled with tension. The other guests had formed a loose, fascinated circle around us, smelling the blood in the water. Mr. Thorne, ever the diplomat, swooped in. The champagne tower is ready. Shall we all move to the bow? I spent the rest of the evening putting on a masterclass in performative affection. I fed Leo strawberries. I dabbed the corner of his mouth with my napkin. We were so sickeningly sweet we could have given the entire guest list a cavity. Julian maintained a glacial silence, while Isabella's gaze kept drifting back to Leo. Finally, I couldn't resist. I picked up my glass and sauntered over to Julian, who was brooding near the railing. "A toast, Julian," I said, raising my glass. "To your family's generous donation. It's really working out for me." He sneered. "Running through the funds already? Out hunting for your next sugar daddy so soon?" "Not at all." I pulled out my phone and showed him the latest bank balance. "See that? I made 300 grand in the market today. By the way, your fiancée seems quite taken with my Leo. Should I give her his number?" Julian snatched the phone from my hand. I leaned in, my lips close to his ear. "She just took a sneaky picture of his abs. Want me to airdrop it to you? Celine." His voice was a low, dangerous growl, his knuckles white around my phone. I plucked it gently from his grasp. "The party's a bit dull, don't you think? I think we'll head out." The evening ended on a sour note. The next morning my phone rang. It was my real estate agent. "Miss Croft, I'm so sorry. The Lakeview property you were going to put an offer on? It was bought. All cash. An hour ago." A cold stone dropped into my stomach. "By whom?" "A holding company." But the agent let it slip. It was a Mr. Vance. I threw the pillow I was holding across the room. "Damn you, Julian Vance. You petty, petty man." The doorbell rang. I stomped over and yanked it open, ready to give the mailman a piece of my mind. It wasn't the mailman. Eleanor Vance stood on my doorstep, her expression even more pinched and unpleasant than the last time I'd seen her. The Tahoe sunshine did nothing to warm her. He got straight to the point. "Miss Croft. Another 10 million. Leave Lake Tahoe. Tonight." I blinked, the anger from Julian's stunt morphing into pure, unadulterated opportunity. "Auntie, is your son's peace of mind only worth that much? Last time was 12, but with inflation and the current market, you'll have to do better. 20 million. No, 30. I held up 3 fingers. "I'll skip the country entirely. Go straight to the Maldives." Mrs. Vance took a deep, shuddering breath as if the air in my vicinity was toxic. He pulled out her checkbook. As she was signing it with a furious scratch, she suddenly asked, "Do you have any sisters?" I was completely thrown. "What?" "Miss Croft," she said, her voice heavy with a distress I couldn't quite place. "I also have a nephew. He's recently become entangled with a girl from Instagram." My eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. "Auntie, you should have led with that. For breakup services I offer a package deal. How does 50 million for the pair sound? I'll even throw in complimentary post-breakup emotional counseling." Mrs. Vance rolled her eyes so hard I was surprised they didn't get stuck. She thrust the check at me and turned on her heel without another word. I gleefully looked at the new check in my hand. 20 million. I immediately texted Leo. "Pack your bags, darling. We're flying to the Maldives tomorrow." As for Julian Vance, who? I was richer, I was free, and I was now, officially, a professional heartbreaker. This was better than any life I could have ever imagined. The Maldives were a dream of bleached white sand and water so clear it seemed like a liquid sky. Leo and I settled into an overwater villa so luxurious it felt like a parody of itself. Our days were a sun-drenched blur of snorkeling, couples massages, and sipping cocktails with tiny umbrellas. I was doing a spectacular job of not thinking about Julian Vance. "President Croft," Leo said one afternoon, his voice cutting through the gentle lapping of waves against our villa's stilts. He was applying a fresh coat of polish to my toenails, a picture of devoted efficiency. "The Crown Prince of Dubai has sent an invitation. He wishes to know if you are available to attend his private party next week." I took a slow sip of my passion fruit mojito, the condensation cool against my fingers. "Decline it," I said, waving a dismissive hand. "Tell him I'm going to Tuscany to look at a vineyard and I simply don't have the time." "Understood, President Croft." Leo nodded, not even blinking. Also, the clean break chain you invested in has broken 10 million in net profit this month. I nodded in satisfaction. Using Julian's drunken voicemail as the order prompt had been a stroke of marketing genius. Social media was flooded with check-in videos. Hashtag sipping on my breakup fee was a global trend. It was all so perfect, a life built from the rubble of my old one, and it was magnificent. My phone buzzed on the teak lounge beside me. An unknown number. I answered with the lazy confidence of someone who has nothing to fear. Hello. It's me. Julian's voice, deep and unmistakable, came through the line. The background was noisy, clinking glasses and a low thrum of bass. A bar. My entire body went rigid. Julian, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Shouldn't you be planning your wedding instead of drunk dialing your ex-girlfriend? He ignored my jab. I called off the engagement. His words were slightly slurred. Are you happy now? The news sent a jolt through me, but I masked it with a crisp bite into a green apple one had on hand. Crunch. Not my business. What, did Isabella catch you texting me in the middle of the night? There was a heavy silence on the other end. Celine, he said, his voice raw. Was it really only about the money? Back then. I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. What else was there, Julian? Did you think I was sitting here pining for you? Sorry to disappoint, but my life is pretty fantastic. I wake up every morning in a king-sized bed, my bank balance grows like it's on steroids, and I have a view that would make your penthouse look like a broom closet. I'm in Dubai, he said abruptly. My hand jerked, smearing the wet polish on my big toe. Leo looked up, a question in his eyes. What a coincidence, I said, my voice tight. I'm heading to Dubai tomorrow. Julian gave a soft, knowing chuckle that set my teeth on edge. I know your clean break store opens tomorrow. I bought the unit next door. The apple turned to ash in my mouth. You bastard. How lovely, I forced out. We can be neighbors. I hung up before he could say another word and immediately blocked the number. I turned to Leo, my blood boiling. Change the flights. We're flying to Dubai tonight. And I want cameras installed all over that shop. If Julian Vance so much as looks at it wrong, I'm live streaming his tantrum to the entire world. The grand opening of the Dubai Mall clean break location was a spectacle. I stood before the gathered press and curious onlookers, wearing a dress embroidered with what looked like diamonds. They were high-quality Swarovski, but the effect was the same. The air was thick with the scent of brewing tea and ambition. Thank you all for coming, I announced into the microphone, my voice echoing through the marbled expanse. To celebrate, all drinks are buy one get one free today. And if you can finish your clean break bubble tea in front of your ex without shedding a single tear, you get free drinks for life. The crowd erupted in cheers. And then I saw him. Cutting through the throng like a shark through calm water, Julian strode towards me. He wasn't alone. Today he was flanked by 8 bodyguards in stark black suits, their presence creating a ripple of unease. He was wearing a white suit, looking devastatingly handsome and utterly furious. Celine Croft, he said, stopping directly in front of me. His voice was cold enough to freeze the liquid sugar in our dispensers. Long time no see. I pretended to just notice him, placing a hand on my chest in mock surprise. Well, if it isn't Julian Vance. What brings you here? Looking for a franchise opportunity? The crowd, sensing drama, raised their phones. I could almost see the hashtags forming. Hashtag Vance Air confronts ex, hashtag breakup fee drama. He glanced around my thriving shop, his lip curling. Business is good. I'll pay triple the market rate to buy this place. Sorry, I said, my smile sharp enough to cut glass. Not for sale. But I can offer you a signature drink. It's called Tears of the Privileged. The recipe was a gift from your mother. A wave of laughter swept through the onlookers. One of Julian's bodyguards took a step forward, but Julian raised a hand, stopping him dead. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Celine, what will it take for you to stop? I dramatically clutched my chest. Stop what, Julian? I'm a legitimate businesswoman. How about this? I raised my voice for the benefit of the phones. If you publicly admit that you're still hung up on me, I'll give you free bubble tea for life. The teasing cheers from the crowd were deafening. Julian's ears turned a brilliant shade of crimson. He gritted his teeth, the muscle in his jaw twitching. In your dreams, he spat. Take care of yourself, Celine. I won't see you out. I called after his retreating back, making a grand, sweeping gesture. The 8 bodyguards scrambled to follow him, creating a comical traffic jam. I watched him go, gleefully noting how the incident was already climbing the trending lists. Free advertising. This was better than I could have planned. That night, back in my palatial hotel suite, I finally relaxed. I sank into the bubbling waters of the jacuzzi, a glass of champagne in hand, feeling victorious. The doorbell rang. Leo went to answer it and returned a moment later, his usual calm replaced by wide-eyed alarm. "President Croft," he whispered. "It's Mrs. Vance." I nearly slipped and drowned in the tub. Wrapping myself hastily in a plush bathrobe, I went out to the living room. Eleanor Vance stood there, looking as out of place as a penguin in the desert. She was not alone. 3 stern-faced assistants flanked her, holding briefcases. Her expression was a complex tapestry of fury, resignation, and profound distaste. "Miss Croft," she began, bypassing any form of greeting. "Let's make a deal." I tightened the belt on my robe, feeling the power shift back into my hands. "Andy, let's be clear. The price has gone up. The starting rate for my disappearance is 50 million now." "It's not about Julian," she said, cutting me off. One of the assistants smoothly handed her a leather-bound folder, which she then thrust toward me. "I want to hire you." I blinked, sure I had misheard. I took the folder and opened it. My eyes scanned the document. It was an employment contract. The title read, Chief Emotional Risk Officer, Vance Group. The annual salary was a number with 8 figures. There were equity incentives attached. I let out a low whistle. Auntie is planning to fight fire with fire. Eleanor's face was a mask of pained admission. "You are effective. The group loses 9 figures annually due to various romantic entanglements of its executives and heirs. We need a professional. Someone like you." A slow, predatory smile spread across my face. This was the ultimate power move. "I have one condition." "Name it." "I want that drunken voicemail from Julian set as the official hold music for the Vance Group headquarters." "Celine Croft," she gasped, her composure finally fracturing. "Just kidding." I grinned, plucking a pen from her startled assistant. "Pleasure doing business with you, boss." I signed my name with a flourish. After she and her entourage swept out, Leo looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "President Croft, are you really going to work for them? This feels like walking into the lion's den." I reached up and ruffled his perfectly styled hair. "Silly boy. This isn't walking into the lion's den. This is being handed the keys to the zoo." I winked. "Just wait. Next month, I'm opening a clean break kiosk right in the lobby of the Vance Tower." My phone buzzed. A message from Julian. "You signed a contract with my mother?" I typed back, my fingers flying. "Yep. From now on you can call me boss." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared for a full 5 minutes. Finally, a new message came through. "Celine Croft. Just you wait." I laughed and tossed my phone onto the sofa. "Just wait then," I said to the empty, opulent room. "Who's afraid of who? I'm taking the Vance family's money, pissing off the Vance family's son, and soon I'll be sleeping in the Vance family's." I trailed off. "Well, the last part hasn't happened yet. But give me time." My new office was an assault on the senses. It was pink. Not a subtle, blush pink. This was a violent, Pepto-Bismol pink that screamed of someone's deeply misguided idea of femininity. Pink walls, pink shag carpet, a pink desk shaped like a lotus flower. Even the computer was a custom-made, rhinestone-encrusted pink monstrosity. The HR manager who showed me in Winston sympathy. "Director Croft, this is your office." "Mrs. Vance." She personally oversaw the decor. I ran a finger over the desk, half expecting it to be sticky. "She has quite a unique taste, doesn't she?" The woman leaned in conspiratorially. "It was President Vance's idea. Julian. He said you had a flamboyant style." Julian. I made a mental note. This was psychological warfare and I had to admire the sheer pettiness of it. I looked up at the gilded plaque on the wall. Vance Group, Emotional Risk Control Department. I almost burst out laughing. I had my own department. To break hearts. Officially. I had just settled into the pink swivel chair, which made an unfortunate squeaking sound, when my new company-issued phone rang. Eleanor's name flashed on the screen. Celine. Her voice was all business. Your first assignment. My nephew Harrison. He's a student at Stanford. He's become involved with an internet celebrity. A girl named Lila. Handle it. The budget is $2 million. I hung up and turned to my new assistant, a sharp-eyed young woman named Anya. Harrison Vance. Give me the dossier. Anya handed me a tablet. Harrison Vance. 22. Stanford Business School. The girlfriend is Lila Luna Zhang. 3 million followers on social media. Pure and innocent persona. I scrolled through the photos. A beautiful doe-eyed girl with a penchant for white dresses. And then I saw it. I knew that face. A grin spread across my face. Cancel the background check, Anya. I know this one. She took my advanced social climbing masterclass last year. I snapped my fingers. Arrange a meeting. This afternoon. At 3 p.m. Harrison Vance slouched into my pink office. He had the Vance good looks but softened with a touch of youthful foolishness in his eyes. He looked around the room with undisguised horror. So you're the breakup expert? He asked, his tone weary. I'm an emotional risk control officer, I corrected, handing him a business card with a smile. You must be Miss Zhang. I've heard so much about you. I leaned forward. I loved your video tutorial on accidentally bumping into a wealthy heir at a charity gala. The dropped clutch move was brilliant. Lila's face, which had been a mask of serene innocence, instantly lost all its color. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't be shy, Lila, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Or should I say, Luna, member number 520 of the Gilded Cage course? I still remember your final project. How to be discovered by a talent scout at a luxury brand launch. Aced it. Lila's knees visibly buckled. Harrison looked back and forth between us, utterly confused. You two know each other? More than know, I said brightly. Harrison, could you give us a moment? Girl talk. The second the door closed behind him, Lila crumpled. Miss Croft, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was your target. I'll break up with him tonight, I swear. I patted her shoulder. Silly girl. Break up? Harrison is the sole heir to the Vance fortune's secondary branch. Letting him go would be a multi-billion-dollar mistake. Her eyes widened. But Mrs. Vance paid you to. Mrs. Vance paid me $2 million to break you up, I said calmly, pulling a contract from my pink desk drawer. You pay me $2 million and I'll teach you how to become Mrs. Harrison Vance. Double dipping. That's what I call a sustainable business model. Lila stared at the contract, her mind visibly racing, calculating the ROI. She snatched the pen and signed. I had Anya call Harrison back in. Young Master Vance, I announced, steepling my fingers. Based on my professional assessment, Miss Zhang is perfectly suited for you. Harrison looked stunned. But my aunt said. Your aunt doesn't understand true love, I said with absolute authority. Lila is a Stanford graduate, a self-made entrepreneur with 8-figure annual earnings. She's not a gold digger, she's your equal. Harrison's jaw dropped. 8 figures? Whoa. You make more than my trust fund. Lila, with my subtle pinch to her thigh, lifted her chin proudly, suddenly realizing she was, in fact, a catch. Harrison dropped to one knee right there on the pink carpet. Whoa. Lila. Will you marry me? After the young couple left hand in hand and starry-eyed, I gleefully texted Eleanor. Mission accomplished. They're getting engaged next week. The reply was instantaneous. I was counting the double payment in my head when the door to my office was kicked open. Julian stood there, his expression darker than a thundercloud. Celine Croft, he snarled, his voice vibrating with rage. Is this your idea of emotional risk control? I calmly put down my pen. I completed the task perfectly. Your mother asked me to break them up. They're now engaged. If that's not a clean break, I don't know what is. He strode forward, planting his hands on my ludicrous desk. What are you trying to do? Make money, I said as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Your mom paid me to break them up. The girl paid me to get them together. It's called diversifying your client base. It's not illegal. Julian stared at me for a long, long moment and then, to my utter shock, a slow smile spread across his face. A real one, not a sneer. Celine Croft, he said, his voice dropping. You are truly. He never finished the sentence. He leaned across the desk, his intent clear. I reacted on instinct, grabbing the nearest object, a pink crystal-encrusted paperweight, and holding it up like a shield. Julian's lips met the cold, hard crystal instead of mine. The door slammed open again. Eleanor Vance stood there, flanked by her bodyguards, her face a kaleidoscope of fury. She pointed a trembling finger at us. You. Julian straightened up, impossibly calm. Mother. As you can see, he said, gesturing between us. We're in a relationship. What? Eleanor and I shouted in unison. Absolutely not. I declared, my voice firm. He's lying. Eleanor screeched. Julian just shrugged. She's taking back all the money. I slowly pulled out my phone. Andy, I have a video here. A masterclass on marrying into a wealthy family, starring your future niece-in-law, Lila. What if it were to accidentally find its way online? Eleanor looked as if she might spontaneously combust. After a tense standoff, a new deal was struck. I would remain as the emotional risk officer, but I had to have one reconciliation dinner with Julian per week. After everyone had left, Julian lingered by the door. Teacher Croft, he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. I'd like to sign up for your wealthy woman course. Get out, I said, throwing the pink paperweight at him. It missed and shattered a pink lamp. He was still laughing as he closed the door. The game had just gotten infinitely more complicated. I was no longer just an outsider taking their money. I was inside the castle walls, and I had just become the most dangerous player of all. The first reconciliation dinner, with Julian, was a spectacle of silent, seething hostility held at a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a name on the door. We sat at a private table, the air between us so thick you could carve it. Julian spent the evening scrolling through his phone, while I made a show of texting Leo excessively detailed instructions about my skincare routine. This is pointless, I finally said as a waiter cleared our untouched plates of truffle risotto. Mother's orders, he replied without looking up. Think of it as a corporate compliance meeting. Fine. Item 1 on the agenda. Your mother's interior designer should be fired. My office is an eyesore. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I think it suits you. Loud and unmissable. The following week I decided if I was stuck with this pink prison, I would use it as my command center. My Lyra Women's Finance and Business Academy was taking off, but the Vance Group offered a captive audience of a different sort. I started an internal, unofficial mentorship program. My students weren't the daughters of the wealthy. They were the secretaries, the junior analysts, the marketing assistants, the women who saw how the sausage was made and knew exactly which ingredients were rotten. My office, dubbed the Pink Panther Room by my disciples, became a hub of whispered strategy sessions after hours. Remember the 3 pillars? I lectured to a small, rapt audience of 5 one evening, pointing to a whiteboard I'd insisted on installing. 1. Financial literacy. Know your worth and then add tax. 2. Emotional fortitude. Cry pretty if you must, but always have an exit strategy. 3. Strategic alliances. We lift each other up because no one else will. Anya, my assistant, handed out binders titled, Navigating the Patriarchal Labyrinth, a Practical Guide. It was during one of these sessions that Mrs. Vance's summons came. The atmosphere in her top-floor office was arctic. As soon as I entered, a leather folder skidded across the polished floor and stopped at my feet. Celine Croft, Eleanor hissed, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at a tablet on her desk. On it, a video played. It was one of my latest viral hits, Top 10 Signs You're Dating a Mama's Boy and How to Cash Out. The view count was well over 10 million. The comments were a bloodbath with countless users tagging Julian. Look at what you've done, she seethed. I picked up the folder and sat down without being invited, crossing my legs. Oh, Auntie. You're a subscriber? Don't forget to like and share. I brought you here to handle the family's entanglements, not to teach the world how to dismantle us. Her jade bracelet chattered against the desk. And who gave you permission to leak internal documents? That's not leaking, I said calmly, pulling out my phone. It's right here in Clause 7b. Party B has the right to use anonymized, desensitized case studies for educational purposes. I looked up and smiled sweetly. I blurred out Julian's face. But that Gucci shirt he was wearing in the background is pretty distinctive, I'll admit. Enough, she slammed her hand down. As of today you're fired. Security. Now, auntie, don't be hasty. I tapped my phone screen. Eleanor's own voice, cold and clear, filled the room. The girl is a problem. If a simple payoff doesn't work, we may need to consider more permanent solutions. Scandal. Perhaps even a staged accident. I stopped the recording. The color drained from Eleanor's face. How much do you want? She whispered, her voice ragged. I don't want money, I said, standing up. I want you to personally cut the ribbon at the grand opening of my Lyra Women's Finance and Business Academy's new flagship campus next week. And I want you to give an interview praising my innovative pedagogical methods. Walking out of her office, I felt a surge of power so potent it was dizzying. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Come to my office. No. I took my time meandering through the Vance Tower's opulent halls for a good 30 minutes before pushing open his door. Julian was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to me. Hearing the door, he turned. The cityscape glittered behind him like a scattered jewel box. How long are you going to keep this up, Celine? He asked, his voice low. I walked straight to his desk and dropped into his luxurious leather chair, spinning around in it. Keep what up? I'm just doing my job. Exceptionally well, I might add. He sneered. Teaching girls how to extort breakup fees? How to spot a trust fund tycoon? Do you know how many strategic alliances have collapsed because of your tutorials? I made a show of counting on my fingers. The Wang merger, the Jiao acquisition, the Li partnership, so about 7 or 8? He strode over and leaned down, bracing his hands on the armrests of the chair, caging me in. His cologne, something expensive and woody, enveloped me. Do you hate me? He asked, his gaze intense, searching my face. The question was so direct it threw me. Hate you? I laughed, a brittle sound. Julian, you flatter yourself. I have to send a gift when my ex-boyfriend's current girlfriend's best friend's cat gets neutered. I don't have the emotional real estate to hate you. Then why? He pressed, his voice dropping. Why this crusade against my family? Because it's fun, I said, pushing him away and standing up to regain my footing. It's more satisfying than any breakup fee. He was silent for a long moment, studying me. Then he said, I'm getting engaged. The words landed like a physical blow, but I didn't let it show. I plastered on my most professional, vacant smile. Congratulations. Don't forget to send me an invitation. I'll bring a date. He grabbed my wrist, his grip firm. Celine, don't you feel even a little? No. I cut him off, my voice sharp as a scalpel. I pulled my wrist from his grasp and reached into my bag, pulling out my phone. But since we're on the topic of your engagement, Julian, would you like to hear this? I pressed play. His own voice, raw and desperate, filled the space between us. Celine, I was wrong. I love you. It's always been you. That fiancé was all my mother's doing. Julian's face went ashen. When did you record that? That night you were drunk and pathetic. Remember? I smiled and turned off the recording. Don't worry. I only play it on special occasions. Like, say, your engagement party. He was so angry a muscle in his jaw twitched violently, yet he was utterly powerless. I walked to the door, my head high. By the way, I said, turning back to blow him a kiss. I quit. If you want to argue with me again, you'll need to book an appointment through my academy. My consultation fee is $10,000 an hour. But for an old flame I'll give you a 20% discount. A month later I stood on a new stage in a sleek, modern auditorium that was the antithesis of the pink office. Dozens of media outlets flashed their cameras as I announced the opening of the flagship campus for the Lyra Women's Financial Business Academy. I was dressed in a sharp, high-end tailored suit, the very picture of empowered success. Our mission, I declared, my voice echoing with conviction, is to empower every woman to confidently say, my stunning is my own doing. The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar figure standing in the back, partially obscured by shadows. Julian, wearing a black face mask, his intense gaze fixed on me. He didn't approach. After the ribbon cutting, my assistant handed me a small, exquisitely wrapped box. President Croft, Mr. Vance left this for you. I opened it. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was the torn check stub from all those months ago. the one he had ripped to pieces in my old apartment. It had been meticulously restored, the tiers filled with gold foil, a practice the Japanese call kintsugi. Turning it over, I saw 2 words inscribed in his familiar handwriting. You won. I smiled, a real, unforced smile this time, and tossed the box into a display cabinet filled with success stories from my students. Next to a banner from Lila Zhang, from Instagram to in-law, a modern Cinderella story, it looked perfect. That night at the celebration dinner, slightly buzzed on champagne, I stood on the hotel balcony under a canopy of stars. My phone beeped. A news link from Julian. The headline read, Vansair engagement cancelled amid prenup dispute. I typed back, my fingers feeling light. Need breakup consultant services? I offer a VIP discount. The night breeze was cool on my skin, dispelling the champagne haze. In the quiet, I let myself think about that afternoon in the tea shop. If I had to do it all over again, would I? The answer came instantly, clean and sharp. Yes. Every single time. Money never lies to you. It doesn't promise you forever and then introduce you to its fiancé. It doesn't call you drunk, whispering things it doesn't mean. President Croft? My assistant's voice came from behind me. Forbes is on the line for the interview. I straightened my suit, the moment of vulnerability passing as quickly as it came. I'm ready. Weeks later, in his impeccably minimalist office, Julian Vance looked up as his assistant, Xiao Wang, entered holding a package as if it were a live explosive. Sir, are you sure about this? Xiao Wang's face was pale. Put it there, Julian said, not looking up from his documents. Xiao Wang placed the box on the desk and withdrew his hand as if burned. The box was a vibrant fuchsia, emblazoned with a logo he knew all too well, the Lyra Women's Finance and Business Academy. The subtitle read, Specializing in Curing Lovesickness. Would you like me to open it for you? Xiao Wang asked nervously. No. You may leave. When the door clicked shut, Julian set down his pen. A slow, deliberate smile spread across his face. He opened the package. Inside was a set of beautifully printed hardcover textbooks, 36 strategies to identify a fuckboy, breakup compensation negotiation skills, a guide to dodging pitfalls in wealthy families. On the very top layer was a gilded invitation. You are cordially invited to attend the Independent Women's Wealth and Freedom Seminar, hosted by Celine Croft. A postscript was handwritten at the bottom. P.S. No men allowed. Julian chuckled softly to himself, tracing the embossed letters of her name. It was a flawless countermove. The game was far from over. Meanwhile, in the principal's office of my academy, I was reviewing the latest student applications. My finger paused on one. This Li Xiaomi, there's an issue. Leo leaned in to look. 22 years old. Profession listed as socialite. The recommender is a Secretary Lee from the Vance Group. He looked at me. Should we disqualify her? I felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. No need, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Let's play along. Prepare a special set of teaching materials for her. Focus on Module 7. 100 Ways to Identify and Neutralize a Stalker. 3 days later, at the opening ceremony for a new cohort, I stood on the podium and scanned the sea of eager, ambitious faces. My gaze landed on a girl in the last row. She was conspicuously tall, at least 6 feet, with an ill-fitting black wig and a medical mask. The hairy, muscular calves beneath the A-line skirt were a dead giveaway. Welcome, everyone, I began, my smile bright and knowing. For our first lesson today, let's play a little game. It's called Spot the Straight Guy. The room tittered with laughter. Li Xiaomi in the back row visibly froze. I walked down from the podium, my heels clicking a sharp, deliberate rhythm on the hardwood floor. The rules are simple. I'll ask a few questions. Those who can't answer will face a penalty. I stopped directly in front of him, leaning down so our eyes were level. First question, classmate Li. Can you explain the practical differences between a tampon and a menstrual cup? Li Xiaomi's ears turned a spectacular visible shade of crimson. I don't know, he grunted, his voice a strained, low whisper. Then how many distinct shades of red lipstick would you say are necessary for a complete arsenal? I continued, my voice sweet as poison. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead beneath the cheap wig. One last question, I whispered, leaning so close my lips were almost touching his ear, my voice for him alone. "Julian, doesn't this dress feel a little tight on you?" He jerked his head up, the wig slipping sideways. "You knew." The entire room erupted in laughter. I waved gracefully toward the door. "Security, please escort this young lady out." That evening a package arrived at my home. Inside was the stretched-out dress he had worn, neatly folded. A note was attached. "You look better in the suit." I smiled, crumpled the note and tossed it into the shredder. "Julian Vance," I murmured to the silent, luxurious room. "For every move you make I'll be 2 steps ahead. The best ex is a quiet one." The war was still on and I was just getting started. The victory of exposing Julian's pathetic infiltration attempt was sweet, but short-lived. A true strategist knows that for every battle won the enemy regroups. My academy was thriving, a monument built from the Vance family's own funds, but it also made me a stationary target. The first sign of their counteroffensive came not from Julian, but from the matriarch herself. A new student enrolled in my Advanced Wealth Navigation course. Her name was Cassandra Reed and her profile was impeccable. A legacy from old Boston money, polite, sharp and almost too perfect. She aced every assignment, her insights into financial loopholes were brilliant, and she quickly became a star pupil. But something felt off. Her knowledge had a cold, corporate edge to it, the kind honed in boardrooms, not in the trenches where I had learned. "Dig deeper," I instructed Leo, who had transitioned seamlessly from personal assistant to head of security for my growing empire. "I want to know who her grandfather played golf with 50 years ago." While he worked his magic, I focused on my next move, taking my brand global. The Clean Break chain was preparing for its London launch, and I planned to make it an event that would eclipse all the petty skirmishes with the Vances. I would no longer just be Julian's formidable ex. I would be a global phenomenon he could no longer touch. The invitation to speak at a prestigious economic forum in London arrived, and I accepted without hesitation. It was my chance to address a different kind of elite, the ones who built empires, not just inherited them. As I prepared my keynote on leveraging personal narrative for market disruption, Julian made his move. A smear article hit a major business publication the day before my speech. The headline was brutal: "Breakup Guru or Con Artist? The Questionable Ethics of Celine Croft's Empire." It painted me as a manipulative grifter who taught women to exploit and extort, using heavily edited clips from my videos and anonymous quotes from former students, who described a cult-like atmosphere. The source of the allegations was thinly veiled. All roads led back to the Vance Group's PR department. My team went into crisis mode, but I felt a strange sense of calm. This was a direct attack on my life's work, and it demanded a direct response. I rewrote my entire speech that night. The next day on the grand stage in London, I looked out at the sea of suits and skeptical faces. I began not with economic theory but with my own story. "I was offered $12 million to walk away from a man," I started, my voice clear and unwavering. A ripple went through the audience. "The world would call that a settlement. My detractors call it extortion. I call it a severance package for a job I never applied for. The job of being arm candy, of smiling politely, of making myself smaller to fit into a gilded cage." I spoke for 30 minutes about the economic power of self-worth. I talked about the emotional labor tax women pay in unequal relationships and how my academy taught them to invoice for it. I reframed breakup fees as liquidated damages for breach of the relationship contract. It was bold, unapologetic, and by the end the applause was thunderous. I hadn't defended myself, I had redefined the terms of the debate. The smear article only served to amplify my message. Returning to my hotel triumphant, I found a single long-stemmed black rose waiting for me at the front desk. There was no note. It was a message I understood perfectly. Well played. But the war was fought on multiple fronts. Leo's investigation into Cassandra Reed yielded results. "She's not old money," he confirmed, showing me the evidence on his tablet. "She's a corporate spy. Her real name is Anna. She was hired by a shell company that traces back to a Vance family lawyer. Her mission was to infiltrate your inner circle and steal your curriculum and client list." A cold fury settled in my stomach. Eleanor Vance wasn't just trying to discredit me. She was trying to steal my intellectual property and destroy me from within. "Should we expel her?" Leo asked. No, I said, a new plan forming. We're going to give her exactly what she wants. But we're going to curate it. For the next 2 weeks we fed Cassandra a carefully constructed narrative. My lectures through her began to report back that my business was over-leveraged, that the London expansion was a financial disaster in the making, and that I was secretly desperate for a major investor to bail me out. We let her steal financial projections that showed my company on the brink of collapse. The bait was taken. A week later, I received a call from a Mr. Sterling, representing a consortium of investors interested in a rescue acquisition of my academy and the clean break chain. The offer was insultingly low, a fire sale price. The voice on the phone was smooth, but the fingerprints were all Vance. I strung him along, feigning nervous interest. Meanwhile, I mobilized my real resources. I reached out to every powerful woman I had helped, every contact I had made through the forum. I wasn't asking for a handout. I was presenting a business opportunity. Within 10 days, I had secured a line of credit and a coalition of investors that made the Vance consortium look like a lemonade stand. The day of the final negotiation with Mr. Sterling arrived. It was held via video conference. He was all smug condescension, laying out the terms of my salvation. "Your brand is toxic, Miss Croft," he said. "This is the best you can hope for." "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Sterling," I said calmly. "But I'm afraid I have a better one." I proceeded to list my new investors and the valuation they had agreed upon, a number 3 times his offer. "It seems my brand has more friends than you anticipated. Please extend my regards to Mrs. Vance. Tell her I appreciate her concern for my financial health, but my books are close to her." I ended the call on his stunned silence. The spy, Cassandra, was quietly graduated from the academy with a certificate and a letter of recommendation that would be worthless in her real line of work. We had turned their own weapon against them. That night, exhausted but victorious, I sat alone in my penthouse. The constant warfare was exhilarating but also isolating. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, I looked through the peephole. It was Julian. He stood there, no suit, just a simple jacket. He looked tired, and for the first time, I saw no anger or calculation in his eyes, only a weary honesty that disarmed me completely. I opened the door. He didn't try to come in. He just looked at me. "The black rose was from me," he said. "I know. I read your speech. The full transcript." I waited, my arms crossed. "I was wrong," he said, the words seeming to cost him something. "About everything. About the article. About sending Cassandra. My mother. She operates in a world of acquisitions and hostile takeovers. She sees you as a threat to be neutralized. He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I saw you as the enemy because it was easier than admitting you were the one who got away." The silence stretched between us, filled with the ghosts of all our poisoned words and strategic moves. "Why are you here, Julian?" "To surrender," he said simply. "The game is over. You've won. Completely and utterly." He reached into his pocket and placed a small, familiar object on the console table by the door. It was the Kintsugi check stub. "I just came to return this. And to say I'm sorry. For all of it." He turned and walked away without another word, leaving me standing in the doorway, staring at the golden repaired symbol of our broken beginning. For the first time since I'd taken that check, I felt not triumph, but a profound and unsettling emptiness. I had dismantled their attacks, fortified my empire, and forced a surrender from a man who never admitted defeat. So why did it feel like I had just lost something I couldn't name? In the weeks following Julian's surrender, a strange quiet settled over my life. The smear campaigns stopped. The corporate spies vanished. There were no more petty sabotages or pink office pranks. I had what I wanted: peace. And it was underwhelming. My empire continued to grow, but the thrill of the fight was gone. Building something was satisfying, but it lacked the razor's edge of defending it from a worthy adversary. Leo, ever perceptive, noticed the shift. "The London branch is exceeding projections by 40%, he reported one morning. "But you seem bored, President Croft." "Don't be ridiculous, Leo," I said, scrolling through financial reports that usually gave me a spike of adrenaline. Now they were just numbers. "I'm recalibrating." The truth was, Julian's apology had thrown me. It was the one move I hadn't anticipated. I had braced for a final, all-out war, not a white flag. It left me off balance, my carefully constructed narrative of the predatory Vances versus the righteous underdog in tatters. The final blow to my worldview came from an unexpected source. Eleanor Vance herself. A formal, hand-delivered invitation arrived. It was for the annual Vance Foundation Gala. The attached note in her elegant script was brief. Your presence would be appreciated. A truce, perhaps. E.V. It was either the ultimate trap or the most surprising olive branch in history. My every instinct screamed to frame the note and burn the invitation. But curiosity, that most dangerous of human failings, got the better of me. I had to see this through. The night of the gala, I arrived alone, wearing a gown of deep emerald green that was both a defiance of the Vance family's expected palette and a silent nod to the color of money. The ballroom was a whirl of the city's most powerful people. I felt every eye on me as I entered, the whispers trailing in my wake. Eleanor saw me immediately. She excused herself from a cluster of diplomats and walked toward me, a glass of champagne in her hand. She looked older than I remembered, the lines on her face less like marks of severity and more like traces of weariness. Miss Croft, she said, her voice neutral. Thank you for coming. Auntie, I replied, equally careful. A truce is a fascinating concept. I came to see what it looks like. She gestured to a quieter balcony overlooking the city. We stood in silence for a moment, the distant city sounds a hum below us. I misjudged you, she said finally, not looking at me. I saw you as a problem to be solved with a checkbook. A temporary distraction for my son. She took a sip of her champagne. I was wrong. You are a force of nature. You have built, from a contentious beginning, something truly formidable. Something I, with all my resources and advantages, could not dismantle. I was stunned into silence. This was not in the script. Julian was right, she continued, her voice soft. About many things. Mostly about you. She finally turned to face me, her gaze direct and for the first time devoid of hostility. The game is exhausting, is it not? I have played it my entire life. I thought I was protecting my family, my legacy. But all I was doing was building higher walls. What are you saying? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I'm saying the Vance Group needs a new kind of strength, she said. Not the kind that crushes opposition, but the kind that recognizes and assimilates it. Our board is a fossil. Our strategies are outdated. We need disruption. She looked at me, a glint of her old steel returning to her eyes. I am offering you a seat on that board. The new position of Chief Innovation Officer. The world tilted on its axis. This was beyond a truce. It was an alliance. It was the ultimate checkmate. Not by defeating me, but by offering me a share of the kingdom I had been besieging. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, she said. There are no hidden clauses, Celine. This is not a trap. It is a surrender and an invitation. She left me then, standing on the balcony, my mind reeling. I looked out at the glittering skyline, the Vance Tower standing tall among its peers. I had spent so long defining myself in opposition to that building, to that name. Who would I be if I was inside it, not as a saboteur but as a builder? I felt a presence beside me. I didn't need to look to know it was Julian. She's serious, he said quietly. I know. We stood in silence, the history between us a tangible thing. The check, I said finally. The one you repaired with gold. Why? Because the break was the most important part of our story, he said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. It's what made you who you are now. I didn't want to pretend it never happened. I wanted to acknowledge that it was beautiful, even in its brokenness. I turned to look at him, then truly looked at him. The arrogant air was gone. In his place was a man who had been humbled, who had lost, and who had, against all odds, learned from it. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Or your family. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I'm asking for a blank page. Not to rewrite the past, but to start a new story. Whatever that looks like. Later that night, back in my silent penthouse, I took out the kintsugi check stub. I held it in my hand, the gold seems cool and solid against my skin. It was no longer a trophy of a battle won, nor a symbol of a painful beginning. It was something more complex, more fragile and more valuable. It was a choice. I could walk away, my empire secure, my victory absolute. I could remain the queen of my own world, forever separate from the Vances. Or I could accept the most dangerous, unpredictable challenge of my life. I could step into the lion's den not as a conqueror but as a partner. I could try to change the very system I had rebelled against from the inside. I placed the golden check on my desk and opened my laptop. A new, blank document glowed on the screen. The cursor blinked, waiting. I didn't know what the next chapter held. But for the first time the unknown felt more like a promise than a threat. My stunning was my own doing, and it was powerful enough to build my own walls, or brave enough to help tear the old ones down. I began to type. The end.